Mayssa, hi, hello, and welcome to the Female Startup Club podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm super excited. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. The weather has started improving in New York, so I really can't complain.
Such a nice time. Nice time of the year with all the spring flowers coming out.
Yes, exactly.
Love to start by getting you to introduce yourself and what your business is before we jump in.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Mesa. I'm the founder of Behave. We're a better for you candy brand. So what that means for us is we make products that are low in sugar, but we don't use any artificial ingredients. So we use all natural, low sugar sweeteners to make candy that still tastes amazing, but is better for you from sort of a health perspective.
I love the branding. I love the vibe. I have a total sugar craving now that I've been browsing those. It's so funny when you see like a sour gummy bear, it instantly makes me like have that thing that
Yeah,
happens in
mouth
your
water.
mouth. Yeah,
Definitely. Yes,
so funny.
absolutely.
Where does your entrepreneurial journey start? Or where does this story start, rather?
I sort of initially got the bug for candy while I was working at another health food startup called Daily Harvest. And what I should say is that I have just always loved candy. Like from childhood, I've had such a sweet tooth. I have been, yeah, definitely like I can acknowledge that I have an addiction to sugar and unhealthy addiction to sugar. If there's candy in front of me, like I'm gonna eat all of it. And I think like I joined this company, Daily Harvest, which is this amazing health food startup. And while I was there, I really started revisiting like some of my own eating habits, and I was kind of hitting that point like in my mid 20s where you can't just keep eating like you did as a kid. You know, it starts to affect you, and you get that like crash after you eat too much sugar, you eat too heavy. And so, yeah, just kind of was like really rethinking my own diet. And I use the word diet just to mean what I was eating. Definitely have generally tended to stay away from like really regimented diets and more just try to eat in a way that feels good to me. But the one thing that I really couldn't kick was candy. And it does kind of go back to that point. Like, I've never been someone who's like, okay, I'm cutting sugar out completely. I, one, just don't have the self control to do it. And two, like, I get so much joy from eating the things that I love and eating things that, taste amazing and that are nostalgic. And so candy was always such a big part of that. And even as I really was able to improve, I would say, my eating and really focusing on more cleaner, whole, natural, unprocessed foods and ingredients, even as I really was making that shift, candy was the thing that I just could not find a better option or a better replacement or a better alternative. And I think initially, just as a consumer, I really started like walking down the aisle of Whole Foods or searching the internet, trying to see if there was any brand, if there were any brands doing anything better, and basically coming up empty. And I think, then my business hat sort of went on and was like, wow, this really feels like a white space. I mean, you walk down every aisle in Whole Foods and you're finding better alternatives in every category, down to even ice cream and, pasta, chips, cookies. Basically, every category really felt like it was on this disruption wave. And I just got the sense that candy was behind and had not caught up. And so, that was sort of the initial like wheels started turning. I ended up leaving Daily Harvest. I took another role at a company called Soul Cycle. It's a boutique fitness company. But this idea around candy, or this thought that there's just something missing in the candy category, just stuck with me. And I became a bit obsessive. Like anywhere I'd go, I'd be like, what's in the candy aisle? What are there any new brands? Like what's happening? And, probably a year and a half passed and still just seeing nothing. And that was where I started to ask myself, okay, is this something maybe that I would want to maybe try to create a product that could address this, what seemed like an untapped need, definitely for myself. And I obviously believe that it would be an untapped need for a lot of other people as well.
Mm. And what year are we talking here, just to set the scene for, that year and a half that you were kind of pondering?
Yeah. So I think probably initially had the thought around this in maybe late 2017, or maybe early 2018, sort of that winter, around like 2018. And then sort of ruminated on it over the course of that year. I did a little bit of research and, came up against a lot of sort of roadblocks to really getting this started, whether it was on the manufacturing front, how to develop the product, how to develop the recipe. And so, again, I ended up transitioning into a new role with SoulCycle. But then I would say it was probably around the top of 2019 that I decided, okay, let me start actually outlining what would the steps be if I wanted to get this off the ground, and started kind of working towards that on the side for my full-time job. So it was top of 2019 that I ultimately decided, first question was, how do we make the product? Right. And so I spoke with a number of research and development labs that really are well known for candy specifically. And the vibe that I got from those conversations was very much that these labs are creating formulas and products in Excel. So basically, they ask you, okay, what is the nutrition panel that you want when everything is said and done on the back of your package? Are there any ingredients that are an absolute no for you? Are there any ingredients that you definitely want to have them? And they kind of take all that information, and basically in Excel, they start creating what they think will be a recipe that will meet those qualifications. And they will sort of deliver you that formula without ever even making it or tasting it in a lot of cases. Obviously, at some point you would try it and you would taste it, but a lot of that initial development is really done like in a hypothetical, almost like using an algorithm, very mathematical, very food science driven. And I just sort of had this inkling that maybe this is why a lot of health food products don't taste very good, because you're trying to create the formula, you're trying to back into the nutrition panel that you want, instead of just getting in the kitchen, right? Which is how most amazing food is made, is you get in the kitchen, you taste things, you increase quantities, you decrease quantities until you land on something amazing. So realized I kind of didn't feel aligned with that approach to creating a health food product or a better for you product. And ultimately I connected with a woman named Elizabeth Faulkner, who's a celebrity chef. I reached out to her. I sort of had this idea that if we want to create healthier candy, it has to taste amazing, right? We're not making protein bars. We're not making, something that's a dietary supplement where maybe even if it doesn't taste super good, like people will, they'll eat it like they take their spinach. This is candy. So it has to taste really, really good if people are going to give up their traditional sugar candy that they've eaten since they were kids. And frankly, that our bodies are addicted to, right? Like our bodies are addicted to that sugar. If we're going to present something different, it's going to have to taste amazing. So kind of had this maybe epiphany that if I could find an amazing chef who could make this, then we could take this like culinary first approach where we're actually in the kitchen, like touching the ingredients with our hands and really working our way into the formula that is going to be the best tasting, better for you candy in the market. So I connected with Elizabeth. Sorry, it's a very long-winded way to get to the timeline. And her and I met, early 2019, I want to say, if I have the timeline correct. We basically worked on developing the product over the course of the winter, spring, and summer of 2019. By the fall, we had really gotten the formula to a place where we felt so excited. We felt that it tasted amazing. We put that prototype version 1 formula on the shelf at a store, and we sold out in 3 days. And that was basically the validation that I needed to leave my job and say, this is really going to work, and have that conviction in the idea to ultimately leave my job. And then basically I went in full time on the new business, and I fundraised some money from investors, and then sort of was able to focus full time on working to get us from that initial prototype into obviously a fully developed product that we could launch into the market. And so, I thought that would be about a 6-month process and that we would launch in the spring of 2020. Obviously, 2020 had different plans for almost all of us. And so, our production and our manufacturing was delayed, and ultimately we launched at the end of the summer of 2020. And then we've just been building ever since then.
Full steam ahead. I saw you also sold out at some point, which is it's a bittersweet thing, I'm sure. I want to just go back a little bit to. I'm going to unpack a few different things here. When you met Elizabeth, how did you meet her? Is this like a cold outreach? Like, what did you say to get her interested in being involved in your project?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. That actually makes me really want to go back to my first email to Elizabeth because now we're so close. We've spent so much time together, and I'm actually so curious, like, what did I say in that first email? But it was 100% a cold outreach. So again, I had a bunch of meetings with these R&D firms, and then I sort of had this like a bad gut feeling about taking that approach. And I sort of had this thought of, I want to find an incredible chef to work with. So literally Google top female pastry chefs. I knew that someone who's worked in pastry will understand sweets and sugar and the taste palette around candy, probably better than like a traditional, a chef that's doing more savory cooking. And so I knew I wanted pastry. I knew I wanted to work with a female chef. And yeah, I probably just emailed like the top 20 people that showed up in those Google results, cold email, whatever the email on their website was, or DMing them on Instagram, whatever it might be. I probably connected with like 5 or 6 people just through that cold outreach, but I connected with Elizabeth very quickly after emailing her. We had a phone call soon after, and then I think like a day, like this was all. I think it was emailed her, heard back a day later, got on the phone a day later, got coffee like 1 or 2 days later. And it was just one of those things where it clicked immediately. Like, I don't remember exactly what the initial email said, but it probably said something along the lines of like, I want to make better, healthier candy. And I think that you would be the person to really help bring this vision to life. And again, like I spoke with several people and I spoke with several chefs, but Elizabeth and I connection was so instant because she really is bought into the mission, right? For her, it's not just about, there were people that I connected with who said, okay, talk to my agent and here's the fee that I would charge. And, here's a PDF of how these things are structured and how many Instagram posts I would do and whatever. With Elizabeth, it was so much more first about her wanting to know, like, why do I want to create this product? Why do I want to start this company? And then really realizing that we were so aligned on a lot of different things just related to reducing, sugar in a product in a category that is, traditionally fed to kids. And that is really driving this addiction that we all have to sugar. And, just thinking a lot about how can we, yeah, really just impact and drive some disruption in a category that has been so stagnant for so long. I think she was really excited by that. And I think the other piece that was such a cool, like, just aspect of Elizabeth that really came out and still comes out every day is that Elizabeth is, we just have such a great relationship. She's so like easygoing. She's such a kind person. I think we really connect on an energetic level in that regard too, which is why it clicked so quickly after just a phone call and a coffee. But she's also highly competitive, which I also relate to. Like, I try to be really relaxed and centered and grounded, but then we have this competitive edge. Like, Elizabeth has done every cooking competition you can think of on the Food Network, Top Chef, Iron Chef, all these food competitions. And in them, she's also been the judge for them. So I think also when I told her, like, hey, I want to make candy that tastes as good as the sugar candy, but with almost no sugar, I think there was also something that clicked in her mind that was like, this is going to be hard, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to make the best one. And so I think like that competitive edge within her comes out too. Sometimes when we're in like, the kitchen and doing R&D and working together and obviously testing other products that are on the market or testing other sugar candies and realizing like, wow, our candy compares. And we even have received feedback, and we obviously believe that our candy tastes even better in a lot of cases than candy that is full of sugar. So I think that competitive spirit in her kind of came out as well. And we really, it just made for such a great match for us to work together and really start to get the ball rolling.
Ah, I love that. That's so cool. And I love how you had that instant flow. And like you said, you met on an energetic level. You were there. She was able to kind of like come to the table and be like, yeah, I'm so down for this challenge. I'm interested to know about how the actual, the partnership evolved. Was it kind of like a conversation being like, hey, I'm going to bring you on as a business partner, we're going to do this together? Or is it going to be, you're a consultant, I'm going to pay you for your time? How does that kind of thing actually look?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously when I came to Elizabeth, I hadn't fundraised for the business. All I had was an idea. And, I was still working full time in my job, and I was really using just the money from my salary to fund anything that was required for the business at the time. So, I think like the way that we sort of set things up early was basically, a small consulting fee just to, show that I'm invested. Like at the time, I think what I paid her out of my own pocket was probably like a massive percentage of like the money that I had. But it was really important, that I sort of showed and communicated that I was really serious about this. And then with a plan to pay her like the rest of what would be a reasonable rate for this kind of work upon fundraising and upon bringing in some investment. And then there was an equity component as well. So, Elizabeth is not necessarily involved in the day-to-day of the business, but when we have a research, anything R&D related, any new flavor development, any new recipe development, she steps in and she gets really heavily involved. And so, her title in the company is she's our head of candy. We sometimes refer to her as like our own new age, new era Willy Wonka, which is totally her vibe too. When we're in the kitchen, like testing things, she's so in it. And yeah, and so yeah, she has an equity stake in the business as well. And of course, we want her to feel really motivated behind the success of the business and really aligned that as the company does well. She's tapped into that as well.
Absolutely, that like really future incentive to keep at it and keep going. What made you decide to go down the route of fundraising right away, and what was the kind of things that you needed to consider to take VC capital versus, bootstrapping or a loan or financing through other means?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really, like I said, I was sort of bootstrapping on the side of my role. I had a salary coming in. I was kind of flipping that, putting it into whatever we needed from, in the R&D process, incorporating, some of those early legal fees. And so, I really felt that I had gotten us like kind of as far as I could on my own capital, or just like the money that I had access to on my own. And so, I knew that I would need to raise some amount of money. What ultimately, and the people take different approaches. You can do friends and family. What I ultimately did was more of an angel round than necessarily a venture round. So we had some VCs that did invest, but on a much smaller scale. It wasn't like a one VC that put in, a $500,000 or $1 million. It was more like some smaller checks because we actually were very intentional that we wanted this to be an angel round. So those VC checks we did take were sort of an exception to the rule. And yeah, we just wanted to surround ourselves with the right strategic investors that were going to help bring our business to the next stage, and that were just going to be really big supporters and cheerleaders of, me at the time and just our whole team and our whole business. So that's something that's actually really important to me in fundraising is finding values aligned investors and finding investors that are really bought into the entire mission. Again, like very similar to sort of why I think I connected with Elizabeth. I think about that a lot with just kind of everyone that I surround myself and surround the business with. And obviously your investors and who is on your cap table can play a huge role in the direction that your company ultimately takes and the experience that you're going to have as a founder, right? If your investors are constantly questioning you or they don't believe in you, or that's going to be a much different experience than when you have investors that are so bought into what you're doing and so excited about what you're building. So the other aspect that really played into that decision was that gummy candy has very high minimum order quantities. So that was one of the early things that I realized in the time when I was sort of still in my full-time role, working on this on the side and basically trying to get this to the point where I could leave and go full time on this. I was having conversations with manufacturers and with co-packers. And what I learned is that you don't realize it, but to make gummy candy, most factories can run a million, if not millions of gummies in a matter of hours, because that's how massive the machinery is. So as a small business, it's very hard to convince a factory or even find a factory that is willing to turn on their machine for you for less than those sort of millions of gummies, which, can come out to a couple 100,000 bags as a first order, right? And when you're a startup, you're still testing and learning. You want to get, in an ideal world, you want to start with a small order, test it out in the market, see how people respond to it, and then place larger and larger orders as your business grows. We sort of didn't have that luxury. And so I also knew that we would need enough capital to finance our first couple of orders, and that because of those larger minimum orders, that there was going to be a certain amount of capital required to be able to do that. So that also definitely fueled the decision to go out and raise immediately. And then also, obviously, on a more personal level, like I said, I also wanted to be able to leave my job and then take a salary and not have to like work on the side or take consulting work on the side, because I knew that once I went into this full time, I wanted to be 100% dedicated to it. And so obviously that part of that can come with fundraising as well.
Totally. Having that, just direct focus on what you're doing and being able to give it your all. Overall, do you think it was harder than you thought it would be, or easier, or what you expected?
I think this is such an interesting question. I'm just trying to think of how to answer this without sounding as kooky as I really am. So essentially, like, it was easy. I think it was easier than I expected. One, because I think I had a lot of privileges and I have a certain amount of access to capital that I really want to acknowledge and like speak to, and I'll speak to that in a second. But two, I actually did a lot of like energetic work in partnership with a therapist, also like a lot of my own reading and a lot of my own research and journaling and thinking to unblock certain like limiting beliefs that I had around money and that I had around my ability to fundraise. So I think just to get the first part out of the way. So prior to joining Daily Harvest, that health food startup where I really like sort of started thinking about this idea, I worked at Uber. And obviously Uber was an amazing experience for me. And I met a lot of incredible people and mentors while I was there, who ultimately Uber went on to be an extremely successful company. A lot of people made a lot of money just from being early employees at Uber. So I had a lot of friends and a lot of mentors and former colleagues who, when I sort of went out and said, hey, friends, I'm going to start a company, people that were really excited to, put some money behind me. And, that really gets the ball rolling with the fundraise. And so I'm just really grateful to, a lot of those friends and mentors from that stage of my life. And, but I really acknowledge that fundraising is a very different experience if you don't have access to some of these groups of people. I also had an ex who was in the venture world, so that also opened a lot of doors for me. And so, yeah, I just do want to say, like, I think it was a quote unquote easy, relatively, the fundraise went very quickly, but I know that there's sort of a lot of privilege that it kind of has to be in place for that to happen. That's just not the case for everybody. The second piece is really this, like, it's sort of like I guess it sort of goes hand in hand with manifesting, but essentially, we all have a lot. I think everybody has hangups around money, and we all have these like learned, we have things that we've learned about money or that we've taken in as children from our family structures, from society. I think for me, I had a lot of like limiting beliefs, and I had a lot of sort of deeply ingrained beliefs around money that, money is dirty, that money, if I have money, it means that I'm greedy. Money is this thing that is, I never want to be someone who like is hoarding money in the context of like society and the greater good. And so, with these beliefs in place, how would it be possible for me to go out in the world and actually bring in money from investors, right? Because on some subconscious level, I would actually probably sabotage myself, because I don't believe that I, deserve to be in charge of this amount of money, right? Or that I will be responsible with it, or I have this belief that if I get access to all this money collected from investors, that I'm greedy in some way, or that I'm, this bad person. So actually really working through therapy to understand that, like, well, money actually is a tool, right? I'm not trying to get this money so I can go buy a yacht. I'm trying to get this money so we can further the mission of our company and build something that is going to hopefully really bring a lot of joy and bring something exciting, and hopefully, that can just be a better option for people within this candy category. And so, yeah, I think I really had to work through some of that stuff on my own. And I remember my therapist sort of saying, look, I think you have some of these limiting beliefs. We should work through them. And we actually did some like pretty spiritual kind of like energetic work that I was maybe rolling my eyes a little bit at the time when we did it. And literally we did those exercises over the course of maybe 3 weeks. And then I left my job, and then I went out and I fundraised pretty much within 2 weeks. And I can't obviously say it's like I know that it's not just the exercise that led to the fundraise being easy, but I know that it's all tied together. So, I've definitely leaned a lot more into some of those. I think a lot of people see these things as maybe more spiritual, but I actually think that they're very psychological. And I think there's a lot of like neuroscience to back why you have to kind of dig down into like your inner child and your subconscious and what you believe in your subconscious. You have to unblock, the limiting beliefs that exist there that we develop again through our entire lives. I think especially as women, there's a lot of stuff that gets really deeply ingrained. I come from an immigrant family. I think you get a lot of stuff ingrained from that as well, probably where a lot of my money stuff came from. So yeah, really digging deep, unblocking that stuff really will make a difference in the type of kind of energy that you can bring into whether it's fundraising or starting the company or recruiting a new teammate, right? If you're coming into these conversations from a place of like lack, then you're going to give off an energy that you're desperate for the money or you need the money. Where I was able to shift was to say, actually, I'm bringing an amazing investment opportunity to these investors. And I need to decide if they are aligned with my business and with me, and if I'm going to allow, this person or this fund on the journey with me. So I think just that mindset shift can go a really long way.
That is so fascinating. And I love how, open you've shared that experience, because I imagine so many of us suffer from those same maybe not the same limiting beliefs, but limiting beliefs in general. I'm just wondering, is there any resources off the top of your head that you have that are useful reading or useful places to go on the internet to learn more and to understand this about yourself?
There's so many things. I mean, one that it's a little bit maybe cheesy, but it really was such a game changer for me was this book called You Are a Badass. I feel like everyone has seen it. It's this yellow book cover. They like have it at Urban Outfitters in the checkout aisle. That was really I would say that's the book that I read that was really the kickoff of like wanting to learn more about, shifting your mindset and how, manifestation can really just how to start practicing that and how to start thinking about it and integrating it into my own life. The same author has a book called You Are a Badass at Making Money. I would definitely recommend both. I think another piece of it is finding people that kind of look like you or have like a similar background to you in some way who are doing the thing that you want to do, right? So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, interviews with female founders or, founders of color who, and just hearing their stories and hearing how they had done it. And also even on a more personal level, like finding just reaching out to and connecting with other founders, especially in the food and beverage space specifically, hearing their stories, and also like particularly finding some founder friends who are going, again, like I said, the same thing with investors, who are going to be your cheerleaders. So I basically in those, like I said, those 9 months where I was really working on this on the side for my full-time job, something else I was spending a lot of time in that period doing was asking everyone I knew to connect me to anybody who had started a food or beverage company. And then basically just, taking them out for coffee and just hearing step by step, how did you do it? And then specifically around the fundraising piece, like, how did you do it? And what I found is obviously, you'll meet some people and you'll meet them once, and, always grateful for anyone who's willing to share their time and their learnings, but maybe, it's not like a deep connection. But there are a very good handful of founders that I met just during that time when I was just networking and meeting so many people, that we had such a strong connection. And the people that I was the most drawn to were the ones that said, you can do this, basically, right? I was just sitting across the table from them with an idea. And there are founders who, I think, it's just different personality types. There are founders who will say, look, this is going to be hard. This is really hard. It's hard to raise money. There's a lot of depression in founding a company. Like, it's very lonely, and really focus on those things. And those things are true. And I so appreciate the people that are really transparent about that. But I really gravitated towards a group of founders who are now still some of my closest friends and kind of like partners in this whole journey, and some of whom have invested in my company or become advisors to the company. When I met them, they literally said, look, you have a good idea. Better For You Candy is unequivocally a good idea in a big market. You can do this. You can raise the money, go out there, do it. We'll support you. We're here to answer any questions you have. You can get the product made. You can find a factory. Like, you can do this. So I think I guess it's not really like a book or a resource, but definitely surrounding yourself with people with whatever the motivational energy is for you, right? Some people get motivated by having someone who says you can't do it, right? So maybe you do need to find that like frenemy who kind of like puts that spark under you. For me, I need the cheerleading. And so I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but in hindsight, like, my subconscious, I think, was intentionally just drawing me towards relationships and building relationships with people that really brought that energy just into my journey and into this path.
Ah, I love it. I love it. That is such great advice. And I feel like you've actually really inspired me, because I'm in this phase at the moment, growing the podcast, growing this company, where I'm also looking for more of, coaching's not necessarily the right word, but that mentorship, that coaching kind of element from people who are further along in that journey from what I'm trying to do and who I'm looking to. So love that.
Just going to add, and something I say a lot to people, whether it's like, young women early in their careers or founders, is I think like we're sold this story very early on, whether it's in university or when we're doing internships, that's like, maybe it's less nowadays, but at least when I was growing up, it was like, you need to network with the CEO of the company, right? So like, if you're an intern, how do you convince the CEO to like get coffee with you, or just start LinkedIn messaging like these super senior level executives at the companies that you're most inspired by, and see if you can meet them in some way. And actually what I have found is the most valuable relationships that I have built, and so many of which have actually turned into like lifelong friendships, is when I network with people that are either at the same stage as me, so just peer to peer, or to your slightly ahead, or to your point, slightly ahead of you. So like, most of those founders that I was really networking with that I got a lot out of were 6 months ahead of me, right? Like, because for one, they remember where you are. I think that also gives them a lot of empathy for like the position you're at. The company or the founder that is 5 years in and is doing like $100 million a year doesn't remember. They probably, half the time, they don't even remember like the problems that you're dealing with at that stage. And you don't really have anything to offer them as well. So I really find like connecting with people at a more similar stage or just slightly ahead, just to be so much more of like a value exchange, because you're probably working through some things that maybe they're still working through, or that maybe they did it, but they want to redo it in a different way, and you're approaching it differently so they can learn from your approach. And yeah, that's been really huge for me. And then the peer networking too, because, when I was pretty early on in my career, I remember like I was a marketing manager at Uber, and a friend of mine started hosting these women's dinners, and we would all be sort of in that marketing manager, marketing coordinator level. And, at the time it was really more social. Like, we just had a really good time together. We all sort of became friends. And then as I progressed through my career and all the rest of us did, next thing you know, we are directors and VPs at our companies. And now we're creating these partnerships across each other's companies, helping each other get jobs, helping each other, get PR or whatever it is, because now we're in the position to do that. But I think it was so much more valuable to really find that crew of women and supporters when we were all kind of in the same boat, versus being that marketing manager who's trying to get the attention of like a VP of marketing at a big company who, probably doesn't have the time to speak with you or any real reason to, right?
Totally. Yeah, I really love that. That's great. Such a pearl of wisdom there. I want to switch topics now and talk about the marketing side of things. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to try and speed through it so we can still do the 6 quick questions at the end. But I'd love to hear, how you went about acquiring customers in the beginning and kind of finding the tribe of people who would go on to become, your loyal fans and those true customers and lovers of what you're doing, and how your marketing has evolved in the last 12 months.
I would say from the first step in the whole idea of marketing for us was building the brand. So we put a lot of time and investment into creating a really incredible brand. We worked with a best-in-class agency that have just had so many successes in the food and beverage world called Gander. They're a Brooklyn-based agency. I cannot speak highly enough of their team and their work. And so we really started from ground zero saying, okay, what are we trying to say? What is our message? And actually, what we really spent a lot of time doing was painting this picture of, yes, we are a health food brand, but we don't want to be a diet brand. And we don't, again, Behave is all about eating more candy. It's not about eating less sugar. It's not about eating less, or, like I said, diet has never really resonated with me super strongly, diet culture. And we didn't want to become yet another brand that's feeding into that, that's telling people how to eat. So we did a lot of work to kind of lay that foundation where we're about more, we're about excess, we're about fun, nostalgia for eating candy when you were a kid. And we really wanted to hone in on that. And I think that really parlayed into what type of community we were going to build around the brand and the type of people that would be attracted to the brand. And, that's not to say that we don't speak to dieters at all. I think our product is a keto-friendly product. Keto is a huge community at this point, and we love the fact that we are an option and we can serve that community. We can serve someone who's diabetic, who hasn't been able to eat candy in a long time. So we love that we can fit into a lot of different diets, but a lot of our customers are really just coming to us and saying, yeah, I stopped eating candy. I always felt guilty and kind of icky and a little bit sick after I had it. And now I can just indulge and eat 2 bags, straight to the bottom and still feel great and just go about my day, not fixate on it all night, not feel like I need to go get a workout in now because I did that. So yeah, we really first and foremost, I think, had to hone in on this message and this story, and make sure that we conveyed that really strongly to our customer. And actually a big part of that is, it's kind of an interesting story, is the name Behave, kind of came up in just a little brainstorm off the cuff over coffee with a girlfriend years ago. Back when I first had the idea, we were just throwing names around. And it was always meant to be tongue in cheek, behave, but don't be behave kind of in the Austin Powers sense, of don't behave. But obviously with the name Behave, we did have a worry that it could come off as, us telling people to behave, or us feeding into a diet culture, or telling people you need to behave yourself, or you need to behave a certain way around candy. So we made this bold decision to actually cross the word behave out in our word mark. So really honing in on that idea that you don't have to behave yourself around candy. We are over that. We are done with feeling that we have to control ourselves or our diets, or our appetites around candy. And so, yeah, again, a lot of kind of thought went into how we are framing our messaging and our brand voice. And then ultimately, when we launched, we had a really big press push, which we're just very lucky for. There was a lot of interest, I think, from press in what we were doing. And again, like candy has really been undisrupted in so long. So I think it was a great press story that a lot of outlets kind of picked up on, and that brought a lot of the early kind of traction to the site and a lot of the early followers and adopters. And then we also did a really big influencer push. So we connected with a lot of like-minded influencers. So again, not just like diet influencers or fitness influencers. We painted a really broad picture of all different types of influencers. Anybody, again, who's just kind of like living their best life, very authentic, really speaks to their audience in an authentic and genuine way. And we did a big push where we gifted them product. And that was definitely another really big driver when we launched of just reaching a lot of new people and a way that a lot of people were able to find out about us right off the bat.
And how has that evolved in terms of like what's really driving that growth for you now that you're further on down the track?
Yeah, we've been really lucky in that we are still, for the most part, seeing most of our traffic and our growth still coming organically. We've started doing some Facebook advertising, but we haven't yet really like put the pedal to the metal on that, just because we are still growing and we are still seeing incredible traction. Just with the organic traffic that's coming through, continued influencer marketing. We do continue to always gift people. We get a lot of influencers who actually reach out to us and ask to try the product, and that they'd love to share and support. Still some PR as well, and then definitely like word of mouth and just repeat purchase from people who have tried the product and are coming back. So we've been really lucky on that front. Like you said, we've also sold out. So that obviously puts some limitations around just how much real like firepower we can put into marketing just yet. We are still kind of we keep outpacing our projections. We keep ordering like bigger orders thinking it's going to outlast it. And then we kind of outperform and outdo ourselves every time. So I think we are finally getting that under control in the next month or so. But that has also been, I think, one thing that we've had to keep a close eye on in terms of how much firepower can we really put into marketing until we know that we're not going to sell out again. And we always want to make sure that we're in stock and that we're available for, our returning customers, our subscribers, and just people that are coming to the site really looking for a product like ours.
What advice do you have for women who have a big idea and want to start their own business?
I think if I had to give one piece of advice, it is definitely to break down what you need to do to get your business off the ground into as small of pieces as possible. And I do want to acknowledge that, again, I'm only speaking from my own experience and I'm only speaking from what works for me. I know that there are people out there where like writing the 15-page business plan, really outlining everything super clear and organized is what is going to get them motivated and get them over sort of, to feel comfortable to get to the next step. What I have found in my experience is that every time I tried to sit down and get a really long plan, of every single variable that could go into starting, any business, I've had other business ideas in the past, the more I sort of like sat and tried to get so academic about the idea, the more I just like, one, I lost steam and kind of lost some of the excitement. And two, like you get paralyzed because now it feels so big, right? When you need to know the market size and you need to have all the research and you need to have the product plan and the 5-year product roadmap and your org structure and your hiring plan for the next 5 years, right? This is kind of what they teach you like in a business school setting that you need to do in order to start a business. It really, for me at least, would lead to paralysis. And what happened when I actually did start to get the ball rolling and get this business off the ground was when I started to break it down into small pieces. So instead of saying I need to know everything today, I said, I need to make a gummy bear that is low sugar and all natural. How am I going to do this? I'm going to contact chefs, reach out to the chefs. Next step, and just move that one thing forward, right? Okay, I want to start a business. I need to incorporate. So, I don't need to have a full legal team. I don't need to have, every single type of insurance and every single type of legal protection from day one, at least, those things come with time. I just need to incorporate. And I found an online service that I used, and I did the incorporation. Then when I had a little more money, I had a lawyer double check it and make sure everything was okay. And so, but it would have been very easy to say, oh, I need to get a lawyer to incorporate. It's going to cost so much. I can't afford a lawyer right now. And then you get paralyzed. So yeah, just breaking things down into smaller pieces and really just, like I always say this, it sounds so obvious, but it's like you just need to put one foot in front of the next. You don't need to leapfrog 5 steps ahead. You don't need to know what retail your product is going to go into. You don't need to know exactly what factory you're going to be working with from day one. Just figure out what you need to do tomorrow. And usually it's like 1 or 2 things, and just, keep moving those things forward, and then bring on new tasks and new projects as you reach them.
Absolutely. One foot in front of the other. Okay, so we are up to the 6 quick questions. I'm going to be super speedy. Question number 1 is, what's your why? Why do you do what you do?
My why for the business is definitely delighting customers. Like when we get a customer email that is, we get so many, whether it's, my kid has diabetes and they haven't been able to eat candy and now they can, or just this tastes amazing and now I can kick my, my sour candy addiction and, switch over to this, or I guess continue my sour candy addiction, but in a way that feels better. That is so much my why in terms of like building the business. And then I think my personal why is really just autonomy. Like I think what I love about running a business is that I kind of wake up every day and make the decision of what am I going to do today and what am I going to focus on? What are we focusing on this week, this year as a business, and then on a personal level as well. And that is something that I've just found so rewarding in just founding a company and kind of switching from employee into business owner.
Totally. I love that too. Question number 2 is, what do you think has been the biggest or the number 1 marketing moment that's made the business pop?
Oh man. I have to say the launch. I think we just were so blown away by the amount of press that we saw at launch, and also the number of influencers who posted, right? I think with influencer marketing, a lot of times you kind of like send product out into the ether and you don't know what's going to happen. It's a bit of a black box, but what we have really found is that influencers love candy, right? Everyone loves candy pretty much. So, it's not like when an influencer receives like some weird gadget or like something that doesn't fit into their lifestyle and they kind of just like put it in a dusty closet. When they receive Behave, they really are excited and, for the most part, get excited to tell their audiences about it. So that launch moment, I think between the influencer, promotion that we saw and the engagement on that front, as well as the press, was a really big one.
Love that for you. Question number 3 is, where do you hang out to get smarter? What are you reading or listening to right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like still kind of in a bit of this like more spiritual space. So I would say I'm reading a lot of maybe like pseudo philosophical spiritual things right now. I just finished The Four Agreements, and I'm reading that author's second book, The Fifth Agreement, now. And so I'm kind of in that headspace, I would say, a bit. And what do I read or look to get smarter? Honestly, my team. Like, I think that is something, now I was working on this alone for so long. Now we're a team of 3. And just, looking to them for inspiration and looking to them to solve problems and answer the questions that come up on the day-to-day. I feel like I learned so much.
Love that. Question number 4 is, how do you win the day? What are your AM or PM rituals that keep you feeling happy and successful and motivated?
Yeah, I definitely start my day with actually breakfast, which is new for me. I never used to eat breakfast for years. And I think now it's actually like such an important part of kickstarting the day and actually being in a good state for the remainder of the day. Also journaling every single morning. I do a gratitude journal in the morning and the evening as well. So just like really focusing on positive, good things that have happened in the day, things that you're grateful for. Also setting priorities. So, every day, just what are the work priorities I set them at the top of the week and then also at the top of each day. And I try to really focus on getting through those things that have to get done today. Again, it kind of comes back to that, like breaking things down into pieces. And then getting a good night's sleep, I think, is so key. I can so clearly see when I'm getting, 6 to 7 hours of sleep, what my performance and my mood and my ability to be a good leader look like relative to when I'm getting my 8.5 hours. So that's something I'm just trying to become a little bit more consistent with, for sure.
Absolutely. Question number 5 is, if you only had $1,000 left in the business bank account, where would you spend it?
I would spend it on inventory because I feel like I will find a way to sell it.
Love that. Nice. And last question number 6 is, how do you deal with failure? What's your mindset and approach to it?
I think with failure, or just even, if you don't want to call it failure, just like the challenges that I face every day, every week, with things that come up. I think I'm getting better at, especially the more that things go wrong and then we come out the other side of it. I'm getting better at when I'm in when I'm in like the quote unquote failure, or I'm in the challenge, being able to sort of like future trip, or almost like put myself in my future shoes and understand that I'm going to be so much better off because of this thing that I'm in now. We recently went through something that was very challenging. And I remember at the time, feeling really down about it, just on a personal level, psychological level. Obviously, I had to correct it as quickly as possible for the sake of the business. And I remember in that moment, just, being down, probably crying in therapy, but actually being able to say, you know what, I know we're going to get through this and it's going to be over soon. And actually, every future problem is going to feel so small compared to this one. And so, being able to actually like look forward and know that every mistake or every challenge or every failure really is I know it's so cliche, but like it really is a learning. And if I can put myself in the shoes of my future self that now has that learning, it kind of makes me feel better about it in the moment.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing so openly about your experience and your journey so far. I've just loved chatting with you. I feel like I could chat to you for such a long time. Thank you so much.
Totally. Of course. Thanks for having me.